Hello, my name is Anthony Garcia, and today I will be answering the two-part question: how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? In this presentation, I will give a brief description of my film. Then I will cover the genres I incorporate into my film and the main media theorists that represent my film. And lastly, I will talk about how my film represents social groups and issues. To start this presentation, I will give a brief overview of my film. My film, Insane in the Snake Brain, is about a young father, Anthony, who is the protagonist of the film, and Guillermo, the healthcare businessman, who is the main antagonist, arguing about the monopoly that is healthcare. Moving on, I will now answer the first part of the question: how does your product use or challenge conventions? I will first talk about the conventions used within my film, Insane in the Snake Brain. Our antagonist, Guillermo, has multiple scenes in which he inflicts fear and deep thought into our victim, Anthony. Their dialogue of them going back and forth shows the first genre we incorporated to our film, which was drama. The film that had inspired a dramatic genre for my film was The Hunger Games. The inspiration I got from The Hunger Games was the drama that was happening during the battles between the citizens of Panem and the capital. I incorporated this into my film by showing the drama between Guillermo and Anthony that continues to rise as it reaches its climax and begins to fall as the drama begins to settle down and ultimately comes to its conclusion. When it comes to the conventions of a drama, audiences have a set standard for what to expect. An audience normally expects the plot to follow the standard of an exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. The audience also expects the characters, being people or entities, to be the ones who drive the story with their emotions, actions, and relationships. There is also an expectation for a conflict, being both internal and external, and creates tension that further drives the story. We incorporated Steve Neal's theory of representation into our film through our credits that show a snake wrapping around an apple, seemingly referencing the biblical story of Adam and Eve, and how the snake had deceived Eve. Stuart Hall's theory of representation states that representation can shape the way audiences interpret the meaning behind a film. Stuart Hall would note that this reference set in motion an audience expectation of deception and people making their way around common knowledge. Within my film, I had used all of these conventions to portray a dramatic film within the conversation between Guillermo and Anthony. We started with the rising action, with Anthony talking about the precipice of healthcare and talking about how his and his family's healthcare should not be bought, as he has a grim facial expression at the time too. In a later scene, Guillermo threatens Anthony's family as he says, "with or without your family," as Anthony had said he would rather die. Moving on, the second main genre for my film, Insane in the Snake Brain, was psychological thriller. My inspiration for this genre for the making of my film was The Joker, directed by Todd Phillips, which is a psychological thriller. The inspiration that I got from this film came from the shift in the Joker's mind, which I had incorporated into my film, with the scene in which Guillermo was mentally torturing Anthony, and you can hear the voices running through Anthony's head as the screen gradually becomes more blurry. When it comes to the psychological thriller, there is a set audience expectation in which the audience waits for. One of the main expectations is an intense feeling of suspense being created within the film. This suspense leads the characters within the film to reconsider their choices, along with beginning to focus on the character's mental state. The final expectation for the audience for a psychological thriller is the characters beginning to question reality and question their own selves, leading to a plot twist within my film. My film incorporates this genre with the seemingly unsuspecting character Anthony and how he begins to question reality after the antagonist Guillermo gives him a genuine reality check and puts Anthony's family on the line after arguing back and forth about healthcare. Moving on to the second part of the question, being how my film represents social groups or issues. My film shows the problems within the healthcare system and how it is more of a predator than it is a method of helping others. My film represents this through the way Guillermo talks during the entirety of the film, seemingly representing a predator getting ready to pounce upon his prey. This use of representation shows how these huge healthcare industries prey upon the less fortunate and the ones who are in a struggling situation at the moment. Guillermo persuades Anthony to finally give into the temptation of joining him, sealing his fate through the bite mark in the final scene, dooming him to eternal suffrage and the debts owed to these huge healthcare industries. We incorporated Judith Butler's theory of social normalities presented by the general public into our film by having only by only having the cast being made up of strictly male characters, implying male performativity into our film. The background of the film implies a lower income household, as there are clearly pots and pans in the background that have yet to be unwashed, along with the uncanny yellow light illuminating the surroundings around both the characters. Judith Butler would note that the common stereotype of a common hard-working family father who is the main provider of the household is being portrayed through the use of only male characters. This is further portrayed throughout the film, especially when Anthony first mentions his family and how they should not have to be paying that much for their health and safety, and is later brought up again when Guillermo mentions them again in a more hostile manner. And with that, this wraps up my presentation. Thank you for your time.